This podcast may contain discussions of graphic violence, unsettling themes, supernatural phenomena, and other topics that some listeners may find disturbing or triggering. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. The opinions expressed are simply those of the individual hosts and do not represent the profession of psychology or constitute professional advice. Welcome back to the Secret Passage podcast. This is our first episode back after season 1 ended. I'm hoping we sound better than last season. We've dialed in our audio, mostly me, because I was really just struggling with experimenting with my iPhone, and then finally got with the program and got better microphone, headphones, laptop, etc. How are you, Shannon?
I am pretty good. I'm very happy to be back. Very happy that we'll be done with this episode soon.
Holy shit, right?
God.
This episode is, I'm going to just go on record and say it's my least favorite. I mean, I'm not discouraging anybody from listening to it. It is a good topic. It's timely, it's relevant. It's just upsetting in a really peculiar way.
It is. It's so I can't the word I think of is aversive. Like every time I go to look at it, I feel it like a tightness in my chest and I feel like I want to run away.
Yeah, it's I was thinking about this too because I mean clearly we've done more disturbing episodes. I mean Kimball, namely Lindsay Clancy, Diane Schuler. I mean these ones were profoundly disturbing. With this, it's you put it really well when you said that there's no clear. We don't know the absolute truth. We will never know. Which is not to say even the other cases were completely clear, but with this, there's something oddly relatable. I feel like Catherine and Alan Kassenoff are we've seen some version of them and other people we may have come across in our lives. It's a family dynamic versus, someone dying. I mean, well, someone did die, but yeah, I don't know. But before we get to it, let's get to our secret passages that we went down this past week. The one we can't get away from, that no one can get away from. I'm sure that you listeners are also unable to get away from the attack of information about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and Justin Baldoni.
Oh. Yeah.
It's I'm tired of it now. You know what I mean? I'm sick of it. I go on TikTok and oof.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you mention it now because in a way it reminds me of this case. Like it just keeps ratcheting up. I heard that Blake now wants to see like 2.5 years of every single one of his texts. Like, how is that even legal? That's like private information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She wants to see every single one of his texts to anyone, not just to her.
Which is insane. Because how the hell are you going to go through all of that? Or her team go through all of that?
Also, like, I reserve the right to talk shit about people when they frustrate me. Like if he's talking shit about her, that's normal to me. Like, he's working with her. He might have frustrations that he expresses. How is that, could that be used against him somehow?
I don't know how she can come back from this. And if we're going to go just based on the receipts or evidence, I don't regardless of whose side you're on, just looking at what his team has
Yeah.
um, versus hers. And then, of course, just her previous past behavior. And this is where it's difficult because, you can make the argument whether or not she's a likable person, whether or not she's nice. In this case, it doesn't necessarily matter. It
Yeah.
really just has to do with, is he guilty of the things that she claims, and that what he's bringing to the table is, it appears no.
Oh,
Aside from the
yeah.
fact he has no previous behaviors that would kind of, I don't know, confirm that about her. Like, he's never been inappropriate, or I mean, at least nothing's come to the surface about that yet. But I don't know. But I do believe that her career and Ryan Reynolds' career are basically over now.
Ugh, I know there are so many people who have had an experience like him who we've never heard about in Hollywood who are
Yes.
just like silently cheering
Yeah.
because they never really have to face consequences, I think, these like Hollywood bullies.
Yeah.
The wild thing is, did you see that video of her at some women's conference or something where she was being interviewed about getting roles? So she basically admitted on camera to an audience, I'm not sure when it was, a couple years ago, that that's her MO. She gets hired as an actress, and she doesn't always tell them that she wants to have so much creative control, and then it surprises directors when she does.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's pretty strong evidence of
Oh
her.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. I'm still compelled by it. I still like reading about it, and yeah.
Yeah, it's, what it is a lot of it is regurgitated information. So I'll see one news source,
Oh yeah.
and then it's like 10 others coming as though like breaking news. I'm like, it's not breaking anymore. I already saw this like 6 times ago.
That news has been broken.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about your secret passage?
Well, I had a lot of them. One of them is, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but one is we still have our Christmas tree up and I might leave it up all
What?
year. It's a plastic one, so it's not like producing spores. But yeah, it's we might leave it up all year like the Stork Club.
Well, you know what? It'll just look like you got an early jump. You're ahead of the game.
We just love the lights at night.
Yeah.
But my other thing is, I'm so into scents and fragrances, and I know you are too.
Oh man, so much.
And I have this wonderful hairstylist. Let me put a plug in for her, Nicole Krebs, and she works at Pony Salon here in Oakland, and she also works at a salon in Sacramento. And she's also really into scents. And so when I go see her, she introduces me to all these new lines. So I wear Olo, which is like a fragrance line that's made in Portland, and they have a couple fragrances I really love. Like there's this one called Dark Wave, and then there's another one called Maisoru, and the Maisoru smells like incense, kind of.
Oh.
It's so amazing. And then Dark Wave is like very woody, kind of woody and wintry. It's yummy. But she introduced me to this other line called Universal Flowering, which is so cool. I got a bunch of samples, and my favorite one is Daddy.
Oh, wow. I mean, these are local.
Yeah, Universal Flowering is, I think they're in Canada now, but I think they
Okay.
used to be in the Pacific Northwest. But my package came from Canada, and they make a
Okay.
bunch of different, really interesting blends. And then, of course, I got a bunch of Le Labo too, but
Okay.
but I got a bunch. All the ones I got from Le Labo smell like grandma.
Oh.
Yeah, Tim's like, you really like the old lady kind of
Oh
smell.
man.
I know, but what ones do you wear?
I wear I am a big fan of this fragrance by Liquide Imaginaire called Blanche Bête, which is very, it's a sort of lactonic, I don't know how to describe it. There's some floral in it, but like
Hmm.
the dry down is very it's almost like a gourmand, which I really love gourmands. I'm trying to kind of break out a little bit
Hmm.
of it. My and I also wear Guidance by
Hmm.
Amouage, which I know is a controversial fragrance. Some people think it smells like cat pee mixed with pencil shavings.
What's the perfumer?
Amouage, Amouage. I
And what's the
love
other
that
one?
one. Blanche Bête, and the that one is it's liquide imaginaire, but it's spelled like liquid
Uh-huh.
imaginaire.
Yum. I'm gonna.
And I also love oh gosh, there's another one. Okay, so there's this one by Killian called and I don't wear it super often, but I love
Hmm.
it in the fall. It's Memento Mori, and it
Oh.
smells like earth, like
Ooh,
mixed with
yum.
coffee. I,
Yum.
like right? Like it's very earthy smelling. I also love Gypsy Water by Rito, but the it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of them. I just every year I get a couple. Oh, and then the one I really love, it smells like rice
Hmm.
apple pie. And it's
Ooh.
Jani by Sora Dora. It's so good. And I like to layer fragrances too. So I'll like
So does Nicole. I don't do that yet, but it's fun. It's interesting. Okay, what do you layer with that one?
with Sora Dora Jani, I layer it is called, hang on a second, why am I drawing a blank?
We need to include these in the show notes too, because
For any
I'm
fragrance heads. A lot of them are unisex too.
yeah, mine are too. The ones I like are actually like I think they smell like male, traditional male scents because I like vetiver, I
Uh-huh.
like sandalwood, I like smoky, woody,
Hmm.
musky. Oh my god, I got Egyptian musk. I got this. Remember when I used to wear that?
Yes.
Oh my God. I am so embarrassed that no one's ever stopped me because I
Why?
doused myself in that stuff. And I was walking around. People would say, like, I know you're here because I could smell you. And I'm like, why did no one, like,
No,
just gently?
funny enough, you know who also wore Egyptian musk is Carolyn Bessette Kennedy.
Oh, I know. I bought the kind that she used to wear that she loved so much. They sold the formulation to this one person, and there's only one person that sells it now on eBay.
Oh, that's crazy.
So I just bought it.
It's a very nostalgic smell for me. Like when I smell Egyptian musk, I think of like Northern California, Pacific Northwest, because when I went to performing arts high school, there was a choreographer there who did like East African dance,
Hmm.
and he always wore Egyptian musk. So like it was always it was never unpleasant like
Hmm.
smelling it. It was very like I don't know, it's not an offensive smell. It's a strong
Hmm.
smell, but it's like again, it's just very nostalgic.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, my kids are super into fragrances too. They
That's so
will like
sweet.
walk into my room and go over to my shelf and just start smelling them, and like one of them they I think Angel Share is another Killian fragrance. It is so I wear it only once in a while, and it is very much a like a fall winter fragrance because
Uh-huh.
it smells like it smells like apples, kind of like apple
Ooh.
pie, but also like bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And they wear like Creta Ventus, Bleu de Chanel. Like they smell like a
Oh my God.
shopping mall in the morning.
I love it. My niece wanted, you know that Sabrina Carpenter?
Yes.
You know how she has a line of perfumes?
Yeah, I hear mixed things though.
Yeah, they all sound like they smell like cotton candy. And so I got her a couple of different ones for Christmas. And I just said to my sister in law, I was like, your house is going to smell like a candy store. But she was so stoked to get those perfumes and she's really into them. It was like one of her favorite gifts.
That's good. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a few. Sabrina Carpenter. I know the Billie Eilish one. A lot of people like. Um, yeah. Um, well, you know what? I think we should just go ahead and dive into this case. This damned case.
I know I would spend the whole time talking about perfume to avoid having to talk about this case.
Right? Everyone's like, some secret passage. It's just perfume. Uh,
Yeah, real secret passage. E.
uh, so this case, I'll never forget. You just spontaneously one night just sent me a link to an article by Franny Block,
Mm-hmm.
who wrote this. It is the most comprehensive, detailed, honestly unbiased article on the case that I've been able to find.
Mm-hmm.
The case of Catherine and Alan Kassenoff from New York, one of the gnarliest divorce and custody cases in New York history.
Mm.
I couldn't put it down. The article, it was just, it made me so anxious. And it just made sense to discuss it because at some point, I think all of us will encounter someone, if not go through the experience ourselves, of a very bitter, acrimonious divorce.
Mm-hmm.
But this case and the outcome of it is honestly, it seems like something that the author Gillian Flynn would have written
Yeah.
because I mean, Catherine Kassenoff has, I couldn't help it. You know, she reminded me so much of Amy Dunn from Gone Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And in how clever and cunning and meticulous it seemed like she was. I mean, they how do I put this? It's hard to discuss the case without feeling frustrated with, I mean, well, with both Catherine and Alan.
Mm-hmm.
But the true villain of the story comes kind of at the end, and we'll get to that. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into this. So, for anyone who's not familiar with this case or doesn't really know much, here's the background. Catherine Youssef was a litigation, a litigator in New York City when she married another litigator named Alan Kassenoff in 2006. From day one, they had a tempestuous relationship, but that didn't stop them from having 3 daughters. Catherine, who was closing in on 40, was anxious to get pregnant, and so she and Alan embarked on an IVF journey that ended up being several rounds and upwards of $200,000, with no success. After almost 2 years of marriage and no baby yet, Catherine discovered she had breast cancer. After treatment, Catherine and Alan decided to adopt, and in July of 2009, they received Allie right after she was born. Less than a year later, Catherine wanted to try IVF again. According to Franny Block's article, Alan claims he was not keen on the idea, but Catherine was adamant. This time, the IVF worked, and in February of 2011, another daughter named Charlie was born. Not long after Charlie, JoJo, a third daughter, came along in August of 2013. It's worth noting, and I think it's pretty irrefutable, that both Alan and Catherine were ambitious and career driven. I say this not as a criticism, plenty of parents are, and plenty of parents manage family and career lives successfully, but it's not easy. And given that the Kassenoffs already had a stormy and tempestuous union without 3 children, their household had to have been tense, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Franny Block writes, with 2 career-oriented parents, nannies were a constant during the girls' childhoods. Some staying a year or so, others lasting just a few months. Of the 4 I spoke to, all said the Kassenoff house was a tense place to be. Also, all but one told me that Catherine showed a strong favoritism toward her two youngest daughters, at the expense of Allie, her adopted one. Franny Block goes on to describe another nanny's experience working for the Kassenoffs. Kim Hull was hired as a live-in nanny in 2009 when Allie was just an infant, and told me several disturbing stories about Catherine. Once, she said, Catherine instructed her to keep the baby awake all day by dripping water on her head so that she would sleep through the night. Hull said she refused, worrying that it bordered on abuse. Bordered on? I think
Yeah.
that is abuse.
It's like, yeah. Isn't that a form of torture?
Yes, it's. I thought it was called Chinese water torture.
Oh my
I
God.
know.
Yeah.
As Franny Block went on to interview the other nannies, the accounts of Catherine's treatment toward Allie got worse and worse. One nanny claimed that she heard Catherine yell at Allie for close to 10 minutes. Apparently, Catherine told Allie things like, "You'll never get married and have kids or succeed in life." Okay, at 52 years old, if someone was screaming that at me, I would break down.
Yeah. That's like, I mean, that's low.
Yeah. This same nanny wrote to the court in 2019 during the custody battle. I believe Catherine is a mentally ill and abusive person. A former au pair for the Kassenoffs posted in a Facebook group for French nannies in the United States. Quote, "Careful to all au pairs who are looking for a family. I won't advise you to work for the Kassenoff family. The mother is a psychopath." The
Wow.
perception these nannies had of Alan was that he was nice, though prone to anger toward his wife. One nanny believed Catherine incited Alan on purpose so as to curry favor toward her from the girls.
Mm.
While the nannies had a negative view of Catherine, and really contact with Alan, while largely fine, was limited as he traveled so much for work, Catherine had her defenders. One good friend insists that Catherine never abused Allie, but certainly had to discipline her when she misbehaved. Catherine was, more often than not, the only parent home. Alan, for his part, admitted to Franny Block that he volunteered for international work assignments to get away from the tension at home, which, says a lot about his parenting style.
Mm-hmm.
When Franny Block pressed Alan on why he would leave town so often, knowing how hard Catherine was on Allie, he appeared uneasy, struggling to answer. Finally, he said something to the effect of, he knew he didn't do the best job he could have as a father, but he did what he could, and he held off on filing for divorce because it might have made things worse for Allie. Another friend of Catherine's described Alan as a, quote, monster, and claimed to hearing Alan yelling at Catherine in the background of phone calls. So we have nannies on record describing Catherine as terrifying. Another nanny described how Catherine once locked Allie in the basement alone for 2 hours by herself as punishment when she was 7 years old.
Ugh.
All these nannies separate from each other and on record describing abuse, it's pretty damning.
Yeah.
Because they don't stand to gain anything, you know.
Yeah, and like it's a thing. When you're in I don't know, I guess they're not trained mental health professionals, but
Sure.
one of the things we learn in our training is that your feelings around someone else can be diagnostic. And that often when people do encounter a psychopath or somebody on that spectrum, that there is a notable, to say someone's a psychopath is quite a statement, right? Because she's probably been in
Sure.
so many households and had some experience, and it's just quite a statement.
It is.
Right? And that's different from saying this person, exhibits some poor parenting skills or, whatever. It's like, yeah, and the whole being terrified of someone, that is like diagnostic in my mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
This marriage, or the family's whole dynamic sounds like an absolute nightmare between Catherine's treatment of Allie and Alan's screaming verbal abuse. It makes sense that the nannies didn't stay for super long.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get too far into the weeds on all the accusations, especially the ones that don't have much in the way of hard evidence. I mean, Catherine denied any and all abuse of Allie, and Alan denies physically abusing Catherine, which she had told her friends, that Alan physically abused her. Um, she called the police many times, claiming Alan had like thrown her against the wall and onto the floor. There was no physical evidence of that in each situation where the police were called, or when Catherine would go to the hospital claiming abuse. Nothing came of it.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine's friends had told her to just file for divorce, but Catherine wanted sole custody of the kids. And for her to have sole custody, she'd need to prove that Alan was dangerous. So one day, Allie went to school and told her teacher that her dad had kicked her. Naturally, the school contacted Child Protective Services, and Alan apparently was confused as to why Allie made the accusation, and he wanted to go talk to her and ask her about it, but Catherine stopped him. And then he had to leave to go to the airport to go on another work trip. When he returned home, the house was empty. And he found out from a friend of Catherine's that she had filed an order of protection against him. So this all came as a surprise to him, allegedly.
You can see right here, right? Like,
Yeah.
wants sole custody, oversharing. Like, you can see the inflaming of each side by the other.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to respond to that aggressive move? Of course, you're going to respond to it with aggression when something so important as your children are at stake. It just makes, ugh. Anyway, you can just see it breaking down from the very beginning.
Yeah. And it gets worse. For all you people out there not familiar with this case, it gets worse. Okay. When Franny Block asked Allie about being kicked by her dad, Allie, who was 15 at the time that this article was written, explained that her mom had told her to lie. And in fact, her mom told her to just always lie about her father, which has got to fuck with your head when you're a kid. Finally, in May of 2019, not long after the protective order was filed by Catherine, Alan filed for divorce, a divorce that many in New York's family court system refer to as one of the most contentious divorce and custody cases in the state's history. It just doesn't let up. It keeps going.
I know. One of the things I read today, I should have written down the quote. I want to say that they said there were 30,000 filings. Not 3,000, 30. And I'll try to find that to check myself.
It's wild. These are people I'd be afraid to accidentally rear end or cut off in traffic with my car. Like, Alan would scream at me and Catherine would sue me and then bury me in legal fees. I think that's the thing. I mean, aside from, like the real victims in this case are the girls. They didn't ask for any of this. They're just children. But I think that's the thing. I mean, obviously Catherine, I think, was the most dangerous between her and Alan, but Alan, just with his temper and the fact he's a lawyer, it's scary.
And he has all the financial resources.
And the legal acumen to know what the fuck to do. You know what I mean?
Yes, and who to hire. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so this is the part where I tell you that if you thought it couldn't get any worse, it sure as shit does. It gets worse from here. Okay. So, Franny Block writes about the court case. It revolved around a brutal battle for custody. After Alan submitted the affidavit claiming their mother was abusive, a judge decided the kid's father should temporarily have full custody. A few days later, Alan and Catherine agreed to share custody as they prepared their cases against each other. But the judge ruled she couldn't be home alone with the kids. An approved friend or family member always had to be present. This is interesting. They agreed to shared custody. at that point. So they were fighting, and then there was this moment where they agreed, and the judge said no.
That is so wild.
It makes me wonder if that had happened and they went ahead and went through with the divorce and then maintained shared custody. I'm not saying that things wouldn't have gone to shit later,
Mm-hmm.
but in that moment, I would say that is where the flaw is.
So they wait. So had they had okay when then she agreed to that custody when they agreed to shared custody, was that before they brought in the
Yes,
evaluators?
I think so.
Okay, and then the court denied that. On did they say on what grounds?
I think, I mean, honestly, I think because Alan, was reactive.
Uh
I
huh.
mean, understandably so. Catherine, blindsided him with the order of protection. He files for divorce. He's claiming how dangerous and abusive she is,
Uh huh.
right?
Yeah.
And then he backtracks, but it's already been put out there. So the judge had to make a decision based on what, assuming the affidavit was true,
Oh.
which it has to be. The judge is saying, "Oh no, no! Like if you're saying that these things happened, I can't back down now because that means that the girls are in danger, unless there has to be supervised visitation."
Oh my God. So this is my one of my greatest fears in life would be to have this kind of system and the state having so much power and say over my relationship with my kids or my life in general. I mean,
Yes.
how horrifying that they're, oh, how horrifying. Okay, it just took on a life of its own because of,
Yeah, no, that was a thing. I had to read this article like so many times over because there's so many of these details, and it's like you start to kind of see
yeah.
more and more
Like
things.
how they, like, right, like how they're, ugh, what a tragedy. Like how their acrimony and their sort of ratcheting up this conflict and needing to go at each other made it worse for them because then the system had to respond in this kind of, I don't know. It's like so it's interesting. It's like now like this bureaucratic kind of like, oh god, I don't know. Well, I guess he did introduce information that sounded like child abuse.
Yeah,
So
and
they,
and with all these nannies like sworn statements,
yeah.
I wouldn't want. I mean, I if I was the judge, I'd be like, wait a minute, and now you want shared custody? Like, no.
Right. Right. Now
So
they have, yeah.
yeah, it's and this is the thing. Like, let's say there wasn't all this. Let's say none of it was true, and that the nannies were overreacting. Right? Let's say that's all true.
Mm-hmm.
Alan putting forth that his wife was dangerous and being able to produce some kind of, I guess, evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, like if he was just out of just blind rage towards his wife, claiming all these things. Uh, it's scary that you can essentially weaponize the courts.
Yes, you can. You absolutely
Yeah,
can, and people do. Yeah.
yeah. So, oh,
Poor.
geez, okay, it
Yeah.
is.
Because really, it's like they have a duty to protect. But then all of this is clouded too by the fact that there's so much money involved, and there's so much money involved for every single person participating in this
Yes,
system. Yeah, I mean, the attorneys and the psychologists and the, yeah,
the lawyers, all of them.
yeah.
A court appointed psychologist who was assigned to provide a neutral assessment of Alan and Catherine suggested Alan have sole custody of the children and expressed his belief that Catherine had an unspecified personality disorder. Catherine brought her own psychiatrist to trial, who had been seeing her off and on for a year, who refuted the court appointed psychologist's findings, insisting Catherine did not exhibit any signs of mental disturbance. Abrams, the court appointed psychologist, did assert that Alan was not innocent and that his, quote, rash, inappropriate yelling and uncontrollable temper were out of control and added to the bad environment for the kids. Both Kassenoffs played a role in the violence that occurred. In 2020, the judge ruled in favor of Allen, with Catherine allowed supervised visits with the kids. What was Catherine's response to this? She went ham. She went after everyone. She
Yes.
attacked the kid's attorney, criticizing her on social media. Using her own legal expertise, Catherine made sure the other attorney was taken off the case and denied her roughly $100,000 fee for working the case. But that wasn't all. Catherine got Abrams, the court appointed psychologist, fired from working with the courts. Catherine filed complaints along with two other women alleging professional misconduct and inappropriate behavior with women against Abrams. In October of 2021, Catherine sued the children's therapist, claiming the therapist manipulated the girls. This suit was finally dismissed after Catherine's death.
Mm.
What is so interesting is that Catherine became somewhat of a hero to women struggling with the family court system. She testified before a commission that was investigating biases and inequities suspected with court appointed psychologists. And it turned out that actually these things were happening. Not long after Catherine helped found We Spoke, which is an organization that addresses systemic failures in family courts across the country, which many believed had biases against mothers. This seems especially applicable in places like Westchester, where the Kassenoffs lived, where men tend to earn more and therefore can control the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's ironic actually. Like in her rage, she pointed out like actual existing issues within the courts for women that had less in the way of resources.
Totally. And what I discovered was that the case kind of hinges on this whole idea of parental alienation. So we know that parental alienation happens like as an actual thing that happens. Like parents will take their kids and they'll uh, try to disparage the other parent and make their kids not like the other parent and attach more to them. Like parents do that kind of stuff all the time and subtly, just by name calling or, looks or whatever. And some do it on purpose and some don't do it on purpose. It's like whatever. So sometimes it's just kind of crappy parenting um, and lack of skill and inappropriate sharing. But it can get really targeted and vicious and purposeful and all that. But parental alienation syndrome is a thing that was controversial, was created in the 80s by this doctor, and he wanted to create. The DSM never accepted it. People have debunked it as a syndrome, but that's not to say it doesn't happen. So there's this other guy that I heard about through my sister who's been through the family court system. It was a dreadful experience for all of us, but there's a Dr. Childress who basically says, we don't need to have, in terms of diagnosing, because courts can't diagnose parents. They use therapists and custody evaluators to look at people's parenting practices and see if they, should or should not have access to their children. Um, he says basically that we can throw out the whole idea of parental alienation because it's problematic and it's hotly contested in especially amongst activists who are wanting to change the family court system. And it was parental alienation was a way for parents to get custody from other parents by not on the up and up sometimes, right? Like if they could prove that the other parent was doing parental alienation, they could get custody of their kids. And I guess a lot of Catherine's supporters' argument is that a lot of men use that against women in order to get full custody of their kids. But the cool thing that Dr. Childress was saying is that, there is a role for mental health in this whole process. And that's because a court's job is not to decide, like who's well enough to have access to their kids. but the mental health community needs to kind of step up and learn how to diagnose pathogenic parenting and how and he says there are plenty of diagnostic categories that we can use to look at whether someone is doing pathogenic parenting. And pathogenic parenting will usually result in, attachment bonds to the other parent being destroyed, and the child will become symptomatic. And you can tell based on the child's symptomatology that there's something going on, which I thought was so great. Like it just clarified for me because I was so confused. I was like, how are people saying parental alienation doesn't exist? It does exist, but there's parental alienation syndrome is not a thing, that's problematic. And so that's just a little piece of this case that is so frustrating because in actuality, there might have been parental alienation going on with Catherine, and he might have been acting in good faith, coming forward and saying, "Hey, my kids are being taught to hate me," and but the activists that surround her are kind of, saying that this is flawed. The whole case is flawed because they used that as a defense or as a way to get him custody. So like it's kind of like what we were saying about the case when we were talking about how it's true that the system is flawed, but they may have gotten it right in this case.
Well, again, it's also do Allie's words carry no weight? When she said, "My mom told me to go to school and say that my dad kicked me."
Yes. And another weird piece about Allie is that she was the one of the children, the most sort of abused one, she forced her to sleep on a mattress. The other girls slept with her in her bed, and she forced Allie to make her bed in the morning, right?
Right.
Yeah. But Allie turns out to be the one who kept taking taxis to see her mom when she wasn't supposed to. So there was like this thing that was happening between the two of them, right? You can kind of see that potentially pathogenic parenting, right? Like, I'm going to put you up to doing you're my flying monkey, right? I'm
Right.
going to turn you into my flying monkey and send you out to do my bidding and say that your dad's hurting you. And then there's this bond where she's willing to kind of go and see her, even though she's not supposed to, on her own with a taxi. It's like you can kind of get little whiffs of just kind of the pressures and the loyalty conflicts that she might have been feeling.
Well, especially because she was the one that was treated so poorly while her sisters were treated well. It was like, well, maybe now my mom will love me.
Yes, Cinderella. It was like a Cinderella situation.
Which one of the nannies said that, yeah, it was very much a Cinderella situation. I mean, here she is. She knows she's adopted. She knows that she wants what her sisters had, which was Catherine's love. And if this was the way to get it, it's a possibility. I'm not saying, I don't know Allie. I have no idea. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact that she confirmed or told Franny Block that, her dad didn't kick her.
Yeah, and I think the wildest thing about it is like just the conversations around the case. Like you were saying, the Franny Block article is really the only one that sort of doesn't demonize Alan. It's
Yeah.
fair in that it points out his flaws for sure, but it's the only thing I've read that doesn't sort of collapse like the way there's this whole line of thinking like the system is so screwed up and people get caught in the system and people lose custody and it's often gendered and it's about money and all those arguments. It collapsed it with her innocence in this way,
Right.
right? Like, but I'm not convinced of her being, not very disturbed. I think she seems quite disturbed.
Oh no, we're
Yeah,
gonna get
yeah,
there.
okay,
We're gonna get there. Let's keep going
okay.
because it gets worse. As supervised visits happened in 2022, a server at the restaurant the girls would regularly go to eat and wait for Catherine. Um, the server at that restaurant got to know the girls because once a week they'd go in, they'd sit down. The server had like their regular orders like memorized because they came in. She adored them, and she became attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because she'd see them every week, and the server saw that the visits with Catherine upset the girls. According to the server, the girls did not want to be around Catherine. They would be either like angry, like one or two would like after the visit was over be angry or be, you know, crying.
Mm-hmm.
And it appeared as though the girls didn't even want these supervised visits. In the end, Alan won sole custody with all access to the kids denied to Catherine. And a lot of people believe that this ruling is what led Catherine to fly to Switzerland and undergo physician-assisted suicide via Pegasos, a clinic in Basel, Switzerland. However, this suicide plan had already been established long before courts suspended visitation. The only reason Catherine waited to kill herself was that there were administrative delays. The doctor Franny Block spoke to insisted that an apparent resurgence of cancer was not Catherine's reason for suicide. He called it a, quote, existential suicide, where she was simply so exasperated by Alan that she no longer wanted to live.
Mm.
So, yeah. And the way that Allie and the other, possibly the other girls, but for sure Allie found out that her mom had killed herself was a Facebook post.
Mm.
Because Catherine posted, essentially, by the time you see this, I, will have be dead and all that. But the thing that is wild is, her good friend, had told Franny, well, she she was clearly so upset by this ruling that that she chose to take her life, but she had planned it before.
It's
And
so
here's the thing
weird.
that's crazy too is, she had complained to the court like, I'm broke, I don't have any money. There were, I believe, some of her legal team was suing her for hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees that she didn't pay, but she bought a house in Westchester for $900,000.
That does
And
not make sense.
doesn't make sense. And her friend said, well, she bought that house and bought backpacks and beds and stuff because she believed that she was going to have, you know, eventually like shared custody, like the girls would come and spend the night. And it's like she bought the house while simultaneously waiting for the administrative stuff to clear up so she could fly to Switzerland to kill herself.
I know. I'm like, so I know that when we are under stress, like we're a lot of duress, we don't make the best decisions. And it just reminds me though of her behavior that got her fired from one of her jobs, where they
Yes.
said, right, illogical and erratic, right? Is that what they said?
Yeah, well, she claimed discrimination. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
I lost my job because they were discriminating against me being like a parent, a caregiver, like having kids.
Mm-hmm.
And what they told the journalist was, no, actually, she was fired because she was making illogical and irrational decisions.
Yeah. I mean,
And that's, yeah.
this is just what she's doing again. But, it's like, I understand how absolutely soul crushing it would be to lose your children this way. I mean, not that it was permanent, because, there are ways back from stuff like this. But, you know, I get it. And this just doesn't make any sense. And the way she, yeah, I mean, so it's so interesting because that never gets reported. None of this ever gets reported from in the timelines that are provided. So in Ms. Magazine, Amy Polacco has taken up this case and has written a lot about it. And from the perspective of Catherine and the system and how it's geared toward, it can really turn on mothers. And then there's another person, that article I shared with you that had all the videos. I can link
Right.
to this in the show notes, but he too leaves all of this out of his timelines of her behavior.
And what about the nannies? Like, do they ever
No,
say anything
nothing.
interesting?
Yeah, and it's, I understand that they're using her case to point out the flaws in the system, and there are many. And I do think the system is just horrible. I would never want to be caught in that. But you can't, the selective omission of this kind of information is, it just is disingenuous.
Well, it's lousy journalism.
Yeah, it's like, and I know they're just trying to, I know they have their point they want to make in it, and it's a good point. But it's this example, she's not the best example if you
She's a
really.
terrible example. I mean, there's actually women that are, held hostage by their really bad financial situations that can't defend themselves. And Catherine went and bought a $900,000 house.
I know.
So it's like it's not as though, and also had like, she was a litigator. She understood law.
Well, she was trying to get people's careers ruined, and then she was also not paying her attorneys.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are all kinds of ways that she's not like this hero that they're trying to make her.
Well, it's almost like they're clinging on to the most famous,
Uh-huh.
maybe person, like someone who's actually like became famous, and then also if they're sort of co-opting the Robbie Harvey angle, which let's get to that now.
Oh my God, we are gonna get so slammed if anyone listens to this.
Well, it's
But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I think
I'm
we're
not
making
in,
good points.
yeah, and I'm not.
We're not putting her down and disparaging her as a human. I
There's
understand.
something wrong,
Yes.
it's that is the thing. Like, I don't want to take away the fact that that she was suffering,
Right.
and that was also something that I wrestle with, is like, how do you, I'm thinking about the girls,
Oh, I know
and
that.
I'm like, how do you forgive
Yeah.
your mother who has hurt you? But I also know that Alan was no angel, like Abrams, the psychologist, said. He goes like, look, that guy he's not innocent in this, you know it never had to be. Well, I say it never had to be this way, but I don't know. I mean, looking at it too, it seemed like he was reacting to everything coming his way.
Yeah, it's like it could only have been this way. They both, it was just a match made in hell. And
Yeah.
they weren't, it's like you see these videos of him, losing his temper when he's overstressed, and she's filming him, and I'm thinking, wow, this is just like not a very skillful way to handle this situation. If your husband is telling you he hates you, if you're filming him, and and including the kids, like, when do you stop and question, like, maybe I should actually end this, and maybe we should figure out a way to do this in an amicable way? It's like they just didn't have those skills. They just could not. They couldn't do it, and it was, the kids are like, just the kids are just this true victims, and it's so sad.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like when what was one of the videos was like, she confronts him last minute. You have to do this. I have a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a recognition that this is going to catch him off guard and potentially be a bad, angry situation. But it's like, for both of them to engage in this horrible way and not for once think the children are right there.
Right. Well, she says that
There's none of that.
in the video. She's like, the kids are here, the kids are here. But I'm like, you're not protecting them. You're following him into the shower with your phone and interrogating him and letting the kid, invading his space, and he's screaming at you, and you're not ending it. It's so, it just is so toxic. And I hate to use that word, but like, it's just, that's the tragic part, that the like Achilles heel thing, like they just get in their own way over and over again.
Right. And just honestly, well, okay.
Want to keep going? Yeah.
Let's go.
I feel like, yeah, yeah.
Well, it's hard because that's the thing too, where I'm like, I'm a woman and a mother, and I should completely be siding with Catherine. I'm like, I can't.
No, I know.
I can't. But I'm also not siding with Alan. I'm looking at the fact that they both created this terrible environment for these kids. But the scariest person in this was Catherine. Alan was kind of a subby guy.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? Alan was a Stu. Stu. I'm called Stu
Right.
when I act like him, because I don't like someone coming in and interrupting me when I'm looking and paying attention to something. So when that happens, my husband always calls me Stu. It's my alter ego where I get like snappy. So he's a Stu, but like, it's interesting. I read her psych eval from all those Google Docs that are on file. I read one of her psych evals from a therapist that she talked to on her own and paid for on her own, that interviewed her actual therapist, who was she's seeing, weekly. And one thing they said in her history was that she grew up in a family where the father was things were very gendered. Uh-oh,
Oh.
puppies. Ginger's being so quiet right now. When Tim gets home, she's going to run up the stairs. But anyway, her history is such that her husband, or her father, was, I want to say he was Egyptian, but she said because of his traditional upbringing, their roles were very gendered in their family, and she didn't get to do a lot of things because of her gender. Like, she couldn't get a part-time job when she wanted to. And I just think it's really interesting that story and that like early learning, I can hear it in almost everything. The way she approaches her marriage, the way she approaches the divorce, like how she feels like there's this gendered thing happening where she's being targeted because she's a woman. And it may be true, but it also feels like early learning,
Yeah.
Anyway, and then her supporters are all very much in that same camp, right? I mean, it happens to men too with the courts. They get, there's a bias.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing too, is, Catherine's family did not want to be interviewed. That no one wanted to be interviewed for this, that could have maybe provided some insight into her background, because it's important to know. I mean, it shapes us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing,
Yeah.
but no, everyone was absolutely shocked that she took her own life. No one knew that there was a resurgence of cancer. There's no evidence that there was. Alan of course, doesn't believe that she actually had a resurgence of cancer, but it's sort of irrelevant, because even the doctor that was interviewed said that was not her reason for wanting to end her life.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing, this divorce, everything, that was what made her want to end her own life. And she went out, she, in her methodical, organized way, had a file with everything in it, with the videos and recordings, everything in her Dropbox, and her sort of parting shot that she sent that out to everyone she knew, minus Alan, was "Don't let my death be in vain." And there is a TikToker named Robbie Harvey who got a hold of all this, the Dropbox file of Catherine's, and set out to destroy Alan, and by extension his daughters.
Ugh.
And he got his followers to just go after Alan's employer, or Alan via his employer, anyone associated, that the psychologist that evaluated the girls, all of that went after him. Alan lost everything. He lost his job. He still can't, I mean, as of the article, which was last year, still could not get a job. The girls, one of them, because Alan was confused as to why all these things were happening. He was getting these threatening phone calls, all of that. And one of the girls discovered Robbie Harvey's TikTok. Naturally, Robbie Harvey was getting more and more followers. He was benefiting from this. His career was benefiting from this.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them reached out in a DM and was like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to us?" And he, I guess, made a video publicly saying, "Alan, I know that got into your daughter's TikTok and wrote from, pretended to be her DMing me," which is like, what?
Yuck.
And so, if it wasn't enough that the girls had to go through this horrible legal bullshit, with their parents and the courts, now there's this fucking random ass guy with a TikTok account that has decided to not do any research at all.
Just a bottom feeding parasite of a person.
Yeah, and remember his TikTok bio said recovered narcissist.
Yeah, I'm like,
I just take the recover part out and just say narcissist. You took this absolute fucking tragedy and made it about yourself. So I think you're still a narcissist. What ended up happening with that is Alan, of course, went after him with his own legal team, and then Robbie Harvey posted a 9-minute apology, saying, "Well, I only saw something to the effect of, I didn't know. I just saw all her stuff. I didn't know the other side." So you fucking destroyed this man's life?
I know. It's like you didn't even look for the other side.
Didn't even, because the narrative is too good, because he tries to present himself as like somehow like a male feminist.
I'm so tired of this kind of quote unquote journalism. It's just like outrage porn, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what's a better story?
Right.
That's the thing. It's what's a better story. There's the narrative that we want to believe, because it just sounds better, because the truth is it's too nuanced, because there is no clear answer. And that ultimately, like you and I had discussed, like that's the most frustrating part of this case is that in all likelihood, I mean, Catherine's not a monster. I don't believe she's a monster. I think she did some terrible things for whatever reason, mental illness. I don't know. And then Alan just didn't. He couldn't be the bigger person. He couldn't do it.
I think yeah, it's like there have been people in my life who just have a way of pushing my buttons. I worked for someone for a week before I quit that pushed every single one of my buttons, and I literally could not function. It's like, everything is contextual. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fine and can function well and think and be a decent human in most contexts. Well, in most contexts, but in that context, I felt like I had none of the skills that I normally have in my day-to-day life. I was like, I felt like ashamed. I felt collapsed. I felt rage. I felt like I couldn't find my words. I think they were just truly, and it was a terrible context for everyone, and they just were not their best selves.
Yeah. In the end, I want to add that Robbie Harvey and that they settled, and so that's done.
And the videos are down now too. They're not up.
Yeah, no, he took everything down, but that didn't change, and as Alan said, he goes, well, the damage was done. Like, he's gonna probably, I mean, as of the story's publication, He's like, we're gonna have to sell the house, you know, um,
Yeah.
and probably because they can't afford the lifestyle they have, you know. But it is it is a very it is very complicated, and I won't write Catherine off as like a monster. Like Alan is good and Catherine is bad. I think it's tragic for absolutely everyone. Most especially for the girls. And the only person that I have zero sympathy for is the TikTok guy. Like that was just some bullshit. And that is the shit that is like the doxing and all that just
Ugh.
fucking ruins people's lives. Fucking self-righteous like armchair activists that just will not actually do any real research. But also, even okay, you do all the research, who the fuck are you to go and destroy someone's life and to be so self-absorbed you're not thinking, even if Alan is like the biggest dickhead on the planet and was at fault for everything, he's got the girls, dude.
I know.
Like they deserve a shot at trying to like put their pieces of their lives back together. Like
Yeah.
so anyway, I was thinking about it, and yeah, with Catherine, it's chilling how she just seemed ambivalent about her own life and her own life's value
Yeah,
to just end it all.
absolutely. I mean, it's the thing about it's just like when people we were talking about suicide this week, and it's just like when people do that, it strikes this thing in me where I'm like, oh no, like you could have gotten help. Like there things can turn around, and it feels, overwhelming. I work with people in my practice who are going through divorces with children and are having a really difficult time. And my sister went through family court. uh I It's terribly, terribly and anxiety inducing, and it does cause people, I think, to like the encounter with that system in and of itself causes disturbance in people because it's so high stakes. It's so variable, like what you're going to get with each judge, with each attorney. You have so little control, and things can really spin out of control in terms of the narrative, and then like whatever bias gets developed in the everybody involved, and you can feel like hopeless and like it'll be impossible. She'd said something in her statement that just kind of broke my heart about, you know, being away from her kids and thinking about how she doesn't know who their friends are. She doesn't know what their dreams are. She can't tuck them in. So it's like not only a death of like just at this moment I don't have access to my kids. It's like this death of a dream of how you were going to be a parent and how you were going to get to show up with your kid for your kids and nurture them. And it's a massive loss, because time just keeps ticking by as you're in the system, and things take forever to get worked out, and it's expensive to have professional supervision when you see your kids for supervised visits. And in her statement, she sounds like she's like, I'm doing this for myself, and I'm also doing this for the kids because it's too painful for all of us for me to even be involved. And I understand that 100%. But I also am kind of like, gosh, wow, like it's kind of revealing that she just bailed.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that became clear just with this research is that Catherine, was a winner.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that she was ambitious, like I said at the beginning. I mean, she, the both Alan and Catherine they were incredibly ambitious. They were intense people. They were passionate people,
Mm-hmm.
which is why when things were good, they were amazing, and when things were bad, it was like really fucking bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a little bit of that American dream, I think. It's like we're both successful, lawyers. Now we're going to have children. And
Mm.
then when she couldn't do it, she was determined to do it, not just do it once, but three times over.
Yeah. And I
And
don't think Homeboy was like, like psychologically prepared for
well,
that.
he even said, he goes, I don't know. Well, he said to Franny Block, I'm not sure he ever actually articulated this to Catherine, but he's like, I don't know, man. We fight a lot. Maybe we shouldn't do this. But
Mm-hmm.
again, doesn't sound like there was a lot of good, clear communication.
Mm-hmm.
But there were just, I mean, there were red flags all over the place from day one. But what's so interesting too is that in the end, by taking her own life, she gave like this weird inadvertent gift to her husband because they were still married.
Yeah.
And that was by him losing everything, everything superficial, his job, that right now, probably the house. It made him a better dad.
Yeah.
He had to show up for his daughters, and in the article, he tells Franny, he goes, I'm a stay-at-home dad. Like, I get the girls up at this time. Like, he's doing all of these things. The girls seem pretty well adjusted, all things considered. I mean, they deal with all of this with humor, which
Mm-hmm.
is great. They make jokes and all that. But it was very sad that I don't know. I don't know that that was even her intention. I don't know that she could have predicted what Robbie Harvey did. I think she wanted her friends to just sort of keep going on her behalf. But in a weird kind of way, Adam was so fucking humbled, like just taken out at the knees, like Nancy Kerrigan style,
Yeah.
like just he had to put the pieces together. I have no idea. Maybe he still fucking screams at his kids. Maybe he's terrible. I don't know. But like, yeah, I think that the hard thing about this case is that we really don't know. We don't know if the nannies were exaggerating. We don't know if there's so much we don't know. But
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning that one thing is very clear, and Catherine's friends fucking had her back
Yeah.
till the better end. They had her back. So we know that Catherine was a really good friend,
Mm-hmm.
a really good friend,
Yeah.
and smart, savvy. She survived cancer. At the
Yeah.
very least, she loved the other two, her biological kids. We'll never understand what her issue was with Allie, why she was harder on Allie. Maybe Allie was a difficult kid. Who knows?
That's the
But
other
like,
interesting thing is that in her in her biography, in the therapist kind of wrote about was that she was treated differently within her own family, and here she is kind of doing the same thing to her daughter that would happen to her.
see, this is such helpful information.
Yeah.
It's helpful because it makes Catherine a person,
Right. With a history
and
with
that's
yeah.
yeah, and yeah. So this was a hard one. This was a hard one, and for anyone interested, we'll have it listed. But the article by Franny Block is very good. There isn't really any background on Catherine. This really just covers the case and everything like that. But it's
It's like an American tragedy. It's like
yeah.
right? It's like that's why I became a therapist because I just want to like give people the tools to live more effectively. And when I see people who are super intelligent and who, they want to have a good life and she really wanted to be a mother and she just didn't have whatever, she didn't know how to both of them. They didn't know how to do this in a skillful way and everyone suffered. No one really won.
No, that's the truth. And and they're human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and it really does feel like a folie à deux situation. I mean, there's combinations of people that just they have no business being together, and maybe would have done better in other pairings.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
it it's oh,
Okay.
to finish this damned
Yes, please.
case.
Let's do it. Let's
Let's
wrap this
fucking
baby
finish it.
up.
It's bittersweet to me that in their home in Westchester, if it is still their home, I don't know, but as of Franny Block's article, there's a picture up of Catherine,
Aw.
and Franny pointed it out, like sort of made mention of it, that despite everything, like there is a picture, and Alan said, well, she's still their mother,
Mm.
and that is really, you know it was encouraging. He's not
Mm.
trying to erase her.
Yeah.
First of all, he can't erase her. Like Catherine's like, no, I will be burned in everybody's brain.
It's true.
She's a force. She was a force, and still is. And for all of the possible, again, we don't know the truth. We will
Mm-hmm.
never know the truth. There's the evidence that's out that it seems irrefutable. I mean, again, I don't know, but that even if it's true, she was a person. She was a deeply flawed person. She was an incredibly dynamic person. And these girls, man, I hope that that there's going to be that kind of that reckoning, I think, when they really have to sort of contend with their history, with their mom, what happened with their mom,
Mm-hmm.
what happened with their dad, and I hope that they have the help that they need as they get older. As somebody who had a very difficult relationship with her, I had a very difficult, complicated relationship with my mother, and it's sort of like sometimes it can take your whole life to kind of, I guess, find some peace,
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness, and sort of reconcile that despite how flawed all of us are, we're worthy of love, and
Yeah.
we're worthy of forgiveness, and we're worthy of compassion.
Yeah.
And it's hard, man, with families. Family dynamics are just in general. Like, I mean, they're an extreme example, but family is tough.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes time and perspective sometimes to really fully grasp, that and to have compassion for someone who hurt you, and it's very complex for them. And yeah, I think they will have some. It's interesting. I just read today, I was sort of reading I found this Reddit page with a ton of links, and it sounds like Alan's firm set up a separate trust for the kids in the
Oh,
wake.
that's so great to
I
hear.
know, I know. So, and he seems like he's could be gainfully employed at some point. But I don't know if they disbarred him. I don't know what happened, but I know it's the thing. I get very like pragmatic. I was just thinking like, how are they going to survive if he doesn't have work? And that's the thing that worries me so much about that culture of destroying a person.
Yeah.
Um, because we all do things I mean, seriously, if somebody looked into my life and saw some of the behaviors, remember
Oh,
when you caught me yelling at Peter Ford?
oh, that was amazing. That was amazing. It was so funny. But we've all been there. Like, that is the thing is
We've all
man, we
acted
are,
like assholes.
yeah, we can all be monsters. Like this weird idea that we're all, that like, if we went back in history, that we'd be the ones, hiding Anne Frank's family. Like this
Right.
idea that like somehow we are just fucking virtuous, man. Like, well, if it was me, like you have no idea what pushed against the wall, what you're capable of. And maybe we could all stand it, humble ourselves a little bit and recognize that it's hard to always do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with three kids and a high-powered job, a marriage that's not going well. Yeah, I mean, it could have been way worse.
What's
I mean,
so crazy is you're right. Like already when I was like, shit, this is like a Gillian Flynn novel, and I was frightened by just the thing that made me feel like Catherine was similar to Amy Dunn was really just this sort of this ambivalence about taking her own life, like
mm-hmm.
because Amy Dunn is like, and then on this calendar on this day, I'm going to possibly kill myself once I know that you know her husband was sent to prison or whatever for her murder.
Mm-hmm.
And with Catherine, I mean, clearly she's got it on the calendar. Like she's
Mm-hmm.
going to fly to Switzerland. She's going to do this. But she's got this kind of weird cognitive dissonance because she's got that on the calendar
Mm-hmm.
pending the administrative issues kind of resolving. And
Mm-hmm.
on this side, she's battling her husband in court, helping run this We Spoke foundation, going like how do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really it's chilling.
Yeah.
Um
It points.
Oddly
Yeah.
kind of like I have to admire her just I don't know. Like she's just like got it on the calendar. I've got these things going on. Like again, she was ambitious as fuck. Um and then in the end, I think also was probably just exhausted by
Uh-huh.
I mean, look at what her
Absolutely.
life was at that point. It was she was exhausted.
I
And
would be totally downtrodden. I'd be like, suicide is looking pretty good right now because it is. It's like an incredible amount of loss
yeah.
and I mean humiliation, lack of control, all the things that make us nuts.
Yeah. And
Yeah. All right.
uh yeah.
Are we wind?
Jeez.
Should we wind this baby down?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was one more sort of closing thing that just seemed oh, Alan is not convinced that she's dead. Let's end it there.
Yeah.
Alan is not convinced that she's dead. Uh I think he goes he tells Franny Block he goes I know it sounds crazy, like I admit it sounds crazy, but I'm not convinced. Um so imagine if she's not, but I feel like she would be reaching, I mean, what's the no, I don't I think she is dead. I think she is. She's dead.
I mean, in a way, gosh. I mean, I guess if I were in her situation, going away and starting a whole entire new life with a new identity would sound like a really good plan. Because I
Well,
would,
especially if she would be like, okay, when my girls are legal adults, I will go find them.
yep,
It's not against the law.
yep,
Oh, and because also Alan is still legally her husband, he is like trying to access her estate for the girls.
yeah,
And her good friend, what's his name? Is his name Wayne Baker?
yeah.
Wayne? Yeah, he's her he's in charge of her estate, and he stopped returning Franny Block's calls.
Hmm,
He's not letting go of anything.
hmm.
He's not saying anything. Um I'm just like picturing her like in the French countryside, like stomping grapes, like she's like, working on like in a vineyard. Like she's just like living completely a totally quiet life somewhere.
God, that would be like the best case scenario. I mean, right? And
Yeah,
she learns some kind of lesson and she returns but yeah, I think she might be dead because I think they got a certificate from the place in Switzerland. Is it Switzerland or Sweden?
Switzerland.
Okay. And then they also got, I think he got a death certificate from, but I think even then he doesn't trust it. Is that what he's saying?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Her ashes are supposedly she was cremated, and supposedly her ashes are in like Wayne's custody. But
I hate
but
this idea. I hate this idea for all mothers. Like, imagine going off and dying without ever talking to your children again. Ugh.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if she's like, yo, I'm going to come back
That would be
when
cool.
they're of legal age. Okay, just bear with me real quick and then we'll shut this down. Imagine. So she goes off. She's like in the French countryside. She's stomping grapes. She's like living like this minimalist life and has, is away from all fucking crazy stressful things. She's gotten into meditating, all that. Over here, we've got Alan, humbled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Slowing down. He's not practicing law. He's raising the girls. She shows up with a suitcase when the girls are legal adults. She and Alan are still married, and they suddenly have a good marriage.
Aww. I know, we all love a good ending. No, I mean,
just a fantasy.
Yeah, this is why this case was so hard, because we all love a transformation, and we all love, a happy ending.
Right.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. So hey, man, stranger things have happened.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyway, okay. We finished the case. I'm so relieved.
I'm so happy. Thank you, listeners. Should we talk about our where they can find us?
Yes. I'm going to let you do that.
Okay. We're mostly now doing Instagram, and you can find us at Secret Passage Podcast. And that's probably it, right? We're not doing our Twitter anymore, right? And our Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to stick with Instagram. We're going to do a TikTok soon, probably. And then we also are eventually, I don't know if this season, but eventually we're going to do a video podcast.
Yes. Once we get our sound on lock, we'll pop in the video.
Yeah, and I also have to try to look cute. I also have to figure out. Oh, come on. You don't have to try very hard.
Dude, I have bags under my eyes all the time. I have like a full set of luggage under my eyes.
Oh my gosh. I do not. No, you do not. But I understand.
Yes, I do, dude.
I mean, no, check me out. I don't even look like my real self on camera. It's so weird. Even Tim is like, dude, he's all... It's like the opposite of catfishing for me. People, they're like, wow, you're actually kind of okay looking. But anyway, yeah. All that to be said, once we get the courage up and the tech up, we're going to do video. So stay tuned.
Yes. All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.